Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today we're going to be doing an update on coronavirus to see how it's continuing to spread. The reason why we're looking at this is because obviously it's affecting people worldwide. People are staying at home to work, including me, and it's clearly having an effect on traditional markets because the global economy is basically grinding to a halt. So we're going to look into the numbers, see what's going on, and see what we can take away from it. So in the last video, we looked at the total number of cases worldwide. So in China and then everywhere else. And in the last video, this is where we were. So we could see that it was really starting to pick up in the rest of the world, not including China, and that we were going into this phase of essentially parabolic growth. We were increasing exponentially. If you believe China's numbers, it looks like they're leveling out. And I know some people are skeptical about the data, but and there's a right to be skeptical. But there's also evidence showing that NO2 emissions are starting to really pick up back in China again. So even if whatever's going on there, it looks like there's at least some industries are returning back to work. Some people are going back. But if we were to do an update and look to see where we are today, you can see that cases worldwide have continued moving up exponentially, and until we start to bend the curve a little bit, we're gonna really move up in the number of cases quite rapidly. And in fact, if we plot this on a logarithmic chart, or first I just want to remind you about exponential growth, and then at some point will turn into logistic growth. But if we put this on a logarithmic scale, so basically every major tick mark on the y-axis is 10x from each other, you can see that it's not going to take that long before we get to 1 million worldwide cases. Now this is cumulative cases, not active cases. So there are a lot of people that have already recovered from the virus, and they're still being included in this. So take that into consideration. But if we were to look at what we had last time and say, okay, well, if we continued, did we continue on that trend? And sure enough, we more or less have. We've slightly come below it, but we also were below it over here and below it back here. But because it's been about a month since I've actually fit this data, so when I fit this, it was way over here. And so despite the fact that we've been extrapolating from a fit that I did about a month ago, we've more or less fallen on that line. But I think it's time to refit it and get a better fit. So if we do that, you can see that the curve slightly shifts, and it really starts to line up with this data over here. And this is our regression model. Now if we extrapolate this out for the next month or two, you can see that we're going to cross, and this was the case with the prior extrapolation, we're going to cross 1 million cumulative cases in about a week. And we'll cross 10 million in about 3 weeks or so. So obviously it's possible that we bend the curve and we don't continue increasing at this rate, but we've been increasing at this rate for a very long time. So until things start to change, I feel like we might as well just assume that it's going to continue growing at the same rate it has been for the last month or two. So, with that said, we can look at the time it takes to double. So early on, it only took about 2 days for the growth to double, and this is not China cases. This is just worldwide, not including China. We peaked up here at around 8 days, so it would take 8 days to double. So we want the days to double to increase, so that the spread is brought down some. But for the most part, for the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've mostly been between 4 and 5 days to double. Now, if you take into account the number of cumulative cases so far, not including China, we're at around maybe around 250,000 or so somewhere around there. So if it takes 5 days to double, then we'll be at 500,000 this week, and we'll be at 1 million obviously in about a week and a half or so. So people like to minimize the spread, but once we get to 1 million cases, and then potentially if the exponential growth continues to 10 million cases, then even I think the naysayers will start to be like, okay, Well, now if we compare it to other, say, pandemics or epidemics, we can see that the numbers really are getting up there because the average person spreads it to around 2 to 3 people, which is a very high rate that the disease is spreading among people. So, with this said, we can see that traditional markets are continuing to go down. The Dow Jones Industrial Average and the S&P futures are already opening up at around -5%. They even hit their limit down, so they don't let them go below 5%, but they can increase back up, but they can't go below 5%. It's kind of similar. So during normal trading, there's a 15-minute pause once you're down 7%, and then another 15-minute pause when you're down 13, and then if you hit 20% in one day, then trading just stops and basically everyone goes home. But of course now the trading floor has actually been, you can't even trade on the trading floor anymore because of the fear that it's going to also help spread the disease, because people are basically shoulder to shoulder in there. So, that's interesting. I mean, people can still obviously trade online. It's not like the markets are closed, but that's still an interesting development. And, I think it's important to also realize that if you are getting into traditional markets, just be okay that there could be further downside. And no one will be able to tell you where the bottom is, but there very well could be further downside, considering that exponential growth is still increasing, or sorry, we're still moving up at the same rate. So we are continuing to see exponential growth of the spread of the disease. And, I think there's going to be a lot more news to come out, with the Olympics being postponed and countries shutting, more and more countries shutting their borders. The job losses are probably going to be incredible. And people are forecasting 20 to 30% unemployment. I think just last week alone, or maybe this week, they're thinking that there's going to be over 2 million people in the United States that are going to be filing for unemployment. So while maximum panic does not equal the bottom, you still have to consider that there's still a really good chance that there could be further downside from here. With that said, if you're a long-term macro level investor, then dollar cost averaging during a bear market, if you have that macro level view in mind, could be lucrative in the long run. But if you're going to buy in, and then if it drops another 10%, if you're going to capitulate out, then you just need to consider that ahead of time. So figure out what your strategy is, and then just stick to it. And if you need the money in 6 months, then it's probably not a good idea to invest, just because you want to keep the money in there for a long time, generally speaking. So with that said, tomorrow I'll try to post a video, or the next day, sometime soon, I'll try to post a video talking about an updated risk analysis on traditional markets, so that you can see where we are, how it compares. We have data going back all the way to the Great Depression, so the risk analysis is optimized to account for all of that. So even with that, we will be able to see how much further could we drop and still be more or less on par with other, say like the 08, 09, the financial crisis, the Great Depression, things like that. So if you guys like the content, please subscribe to the channel. If you want to talk about this stuff and its effects on traditional markets and or cryptocurrency, then check out the Telegram channel right here. You can also find a link to it in the description below. I hope this is useful for everyone to look at the mathematical side of the modeling, and not just see the numbers going up, but try to get a better idea of where we might be headed. And you can quite clearly see the trend that we're on. So try to practice social distancing, and just be considerate that even if you are a young adult, you might not get sick, but you could be spreading it to other people. So I hope this video is informative. Again, subscribe to the channel, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.